The rain had stopped by the time Adrian Wells pulled his weathered Honda into the gravel parking lot of Maple's Diner, but the gray October sky still pressed down like a heavy quilt over the small town of Millbrook. Maya bounced in her booster seat, clutching Mr. Whiskers, a worn tabby cat stuffed animal with one missing whisker and a permanently crooked smile. "Pancakes, Daddy. Pancakes with the faces." Adrian smiled despite the weight settling in his chest, the same weight that seemed to find him every Thursday afternoon. "That's right, sweetheart. Just like always." Just like always. The words felt both comforting and hollow. 3 years of Thursday pancakes. 3 years of trying to create traditions that would somehow fill the space Evelyn left behind. He'd learned to measure his life in small rituals now. School pickups, bedtime stories, and weekly pancake dinners that made Maya's eyes light up. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The diner's bell chimed as they entered, a brass sound that had welcomed hungry travelers for 40 years. Maya skipped ahead to their usual booth by the window, the red vinyl seats patched with silver tape that caught the amber light from the hanging lamps. She arranged Mr. Whiskers carefully on the table, positioning him so he could see the kitchen. "Mr. Whiskers is hungry too," she announced, smoothing down her school jumper. "He wants to know if they still make the smiley pancakes." Adrian slid into the booth across from her, his architect's eye automatically cataloging the diner's familiar imperfections, the slightly warped floorboards, the coffee ring stains on the formica, the way the afternoon light slanted through windows that needed cleaning. Everything had its place here, everything predictable and safe. "I'm sure they do, Maya. Margie always remembers what you like." But it wasn't Margie who approached their table. Instead, a younger woman with dark auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun walked toward them, notepad in hand. She moved with quiet grace, her black apron tied neatly around a simple white blouse. As she drew closer, Adrian felt something shift in his chest, a recognition so sharp it made him forget to breathe. The woman's face was gentle, with high cheekbones and warm brown eyes that held flecks of gold. Her smile was tentative but genuine as she stopped beside their table. "Good evening," she said, her voice soft with just a hint of nervousness. "I'm Isabel. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Maya looked up from arranging Mr. Whiskers and went completely still. Her bright blue eyes, Evelyn's eyes, studied the waitress with the kind of intense focus only children possessed. The silence stretched for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then Maya whispered, so quietly Adrian almost missed it, "Daddy, she looks just like Mommy." The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. His coffee cup, half raised to his lips, froze in midair. The familiar sounds of the diner, the sizzle of the grill, the murmur of other conversations, the clink of silverware, all faded to white noise. Isabel's face went pale, her notepad trembling slightly in her hand. She glanced quickly between Adrian and Maya, and Adrian saw something flicker in her expression. Surprise, recognition, and something deeper. Something that looked almost like pain. Isabel started, then stopped, her professional composure slipping. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's fine," Adrian said quickly, though his voice came out rougher than intended. His heart was hammering against his ribs. The resemblance wasn't exact. This woman was younger, her features softer. But there was something in the shape of her eyes, the curve of her mouth, the way she held her head that sent his mind reeling back to mornings when Evelyn would stand at their kitchen counter, humming while she made coffee. Maya, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults, continued staring at Isabel with wonder. "Do you know my mommy? She lives in the stars now, but Daddy says she watches over us." Isabel's breath caught audibly. She knelt down beside the booth, bringing herself to Maya's eye level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Maya Grace Wells. And this is Mr. Whiskers. Mommy gave him to me before she went to live with the angels." Maya held up the stuffed cat proudly. "Daddy says I have her smile, but you have her eyes." Adrian watched Isabel's face transform. The professional mask fell away completely, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. She looked at Maya as if seeing a ghost, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. "Maya," Isabel repeated softly, and Adrian heard something in the way she said it, like she was tasting the name, finding it familiar. "We come here every Thursday for pancakes," Maya continued cheerfully. "It's our special thing. Do you like pancakes? I bet you do. You seem like someone who likes pancakes." Isabel managed a shaky smile. "I do like pancakes, especially the ones with smiley faces." "That's what I always get! Daddy, she knows about the smiley pancakes." But Adrian couldn't respond. He was staring at this stranger, who somehow felt familiar, this woman who had appeared in their carefully ordered world and turned it upside down with nothing more than her presence. Questions tumbled through his mind. Who was she? Why did Maya's innocent observation feel like a key turning in a lock he'd forgotten existed? Isabel stood slowly, her composure returning but fragile. I'll give you a few more minutes to look at the menu." She turned and walked away quickly, and Adrian noticed her hands were shaking. Maya swung her legs happily under the table. "I like her, Daddy. She has kind eyes, just like Mommy did." Adrian closed his eyes, feeling the carefully constructed walls around his heart developing their first hairline cracks in 3 years. Adrian couldn't concentrate on the menu. The words blurred together as his mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Across from him, Maya chattered to Mr. Whiskers about the rain and school, and whether pancakes tasted better when they were shaped like happy faces, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in her father's chest. When Isabel returned, she moved differently, more cautiously, like someone walking on ice they weren't sure would hold. She set down Maya's chocolate milk and Adrian's coffee with practiced precision, but her hands trembled slightly. "Have you decided what you'd like?" she asked, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. Maya bounced in her seat. "Smiley face pancakes with extra syrup. And bacon that's crispy but not too crispy because sometimes it hurts my teeth." "One smiley face pancake special," Isabel wrote carefully, and Adrian noticed she was left-handed, just like... He shook his head, refusing to finish the thought. "And for you, sir?" Adrian looked up at her, really looked this time, and felt that strange recognition pull at him again. "Coffee's fine for now." Isabel hesitated, pen poised over her notepad. "Are you sure? The meatloaf is really good today, and..." "Who are you?" The question escaped before Adrian could stop it, sharper than he'd intended. Isabel went very still. Maya looked between them, sensing something but not understanding what. "I told you, I'm Isabel. I work here." "That's not what I mean." Adrian kept his voice low, aware of Maya's presence. "You're not from around here. I've lived in Millbrook my whole life, and I've never seen you before today." Isabel glanced around the diner, then back at him. "I've been here about 6 months. I moved from Portland." "Portland, Maine, or Portland, Oregon?" "Oregon." Maya piped up. "I've never been to Portland. Is it far? Do they have diners there too?" Isabel smiled at her, and again Adrian was struck by something familiar in her expression. "Very far, and yes, they have diners, but none as nice as this one." "Daddy, can we go to Portland someday?" "Maybe, sweetheart." Adrian didn't take his eyes off Isabel. "What brought you to Millbrook? It's not exactly a destination town." Isabel's composure cracked slightly. She looked at Maya, then back at Adrian, and he saw her make some internal decision. "I needed a fresh start," she said quietly. "And I wanted to be somewhere, closer to family." The word family hit Adrian like a punch. What family? Isabel looked down at her hands, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I think you know." Maya was coloring on her placemat now, humming a song Adrian recognized, one of the lullabies Evelyn used to sing. The coincidence felt too sharp, too pointed. "I don't know anything," Adrian said, but even as he spoke, pieces were trying to fit together in his mind, forming a picture he wasn't ready to see. Isabel glanced around again, then slid into the booth beside Maya, who beamed at the unexpected closeness. "My last name is Grant," Isabel said, her voice steady now despite the tears Adrian could see her fighting. "Isabel Grant." The name meant nothing to him, but something about the way she said it. "Grant," he repeated slowly. "My father was Thomas Grant. He remarried when I was 8, after my mother died." Isabel's hands were clasped tightly on the table. His new wife had a daughter from her first marriage, a little girl with blonde hair and the most beautiful laugh I'd ever heard. Adrian's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down too hard. Her name was Evelyn, Isabel continued, her eyes never leaving his face. Evelyn Morrison. She became Evelyn Grant when our parents married. She was my stepsister. The diner seemed to tilt around Adrian. The familiar sounds became distant, muffled, as if he were hearing them through water. Maya looked up from her coloring, sensing the change in atmosphere. "Daddy, you look funny." Adrian couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Evelyn had never mentioned a sister. Never mentioned a stepsister. In all their years together, all their late-night conversations about family and childhood and dreams, she had never once said the word Isabel. "You're lying," he whispered. Isabel flinched as if he'd slapped her, but her voice remained steady. "I know how it sounds. I know she never told you about me. We lost touch years before she met you. Before she got married. Before—" She looked at Maya with such tenderness that Adrian felt something crack inside his chest. "Before Maya." "Mommy never told us about you," Maya said, looking up from her drawing with curious eyes. "But maybe she forgot? Sometimes I forget things too." Isabel's smile was heartbreaking. "Maybe she did forget, sweetheart. We hadn't talked in a very long time." Adrian stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several other diners looked their way, but he didn't care. The walls of the diner felt like they were closing in, the familiar space suddenly foreign and threatening. "Maya, get your coat. We're leaving." "But Daddy, my pancakes." "Now, Maya." Maya's face crumpled, but she obediently slid out of the booth, clutching Mr. Whiskers. Isabel stood as well, and Adrian saw tears in her eyes. "Adrian, please." "Don't." He pulled out his wallet and threw a 20 on the table. "Stay away from us. Stay away from my daughter." "Daddy, why are we leaving? Did I do something wrong?" Adrian scooped Maya up, his heart breaking at the confusion in her voice. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." As he carried her toward the door, he heard Isabel call softly, "I loved her too, Adrian. Even after everything, I loved her too." He didn't look back. The parking lot felt vast and empty after the warm closeness of the diner. Maya was crying now, quietly, the way she did when she didn't understand why the world had suddenly shifted around her. "I wanted my pancakes," she whispered against his shoulder. Adrian held her tighter, his own eyes burning. "I'll make you pancakes at home, okay? Better pancakes. The best pancakes you've ever had." But as he strapped her into her car seat and drove away from Maple's diner, he knew that something had been broken that afternoon. The careful routine he'd built, the safe boundaries of their grief, the story he'd told himself about who Evelyn really was, all of it was crumbling. And somewhere in that wreckage was a woman named Isabel Grant who claimed to be his dead wife's sister, and who looked at his daughter with the kind of recognition that made Adrian's carefully ordered world feel like a house built on sand. The drive home passed in unusual silence. Maya pressed her face against the window, watching the familiar streets of Millbrook blur past in the fading October light. She still clutched Mr. Whiskers, but the excitement from their diner tradition had evaporated, leaving behind the particular sadness that only disappointed children could carry. Adrian kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, his chest tight with guilt. He'd handled everything wrong back there. His questions too sharp, his exit too abrupt, his fear too obvious. Maya deserved better than a father who fell apart at the first sign of uncertainty. Their house sat at the end of Elm Street, a modest two-story colonial that Adrian had been slowly renovating for the past 3 years. It was his way of staying busy, keeping his hands occupied, while his mind tried to process a world without Evelyn. Half-finished projects marked his progress through grief. New kitchen cabinets installed the month after the funeral, hardwood floors refinished during that first terrible Christmas, fresh paint on Maya's bedroom when she'd finally stopped asking when Mommy was coming home. Tonight, the house felt different as they pulled into the driveway, less like a sanctuary, more like a place where secrets lived in the spaces between the walls. "Come on, sweetheart," Adrian said, lifting Maya out of her car seat. "Let's get you some dinner." "I'm not hungry anymore," Maya said quietly, and the resigned way she said it, like a much older person accepting disappointment, broke something in Adrian's chest. Inside, Adrian heated up leftover mac and cheese while Maya sat at the kitchen table, making Mr. Whiskers walk across the surface in small, dejected circles. The normalcy of the routine felt forced now, like actors going through the motions of a play they no longer believed in. "Daddy?" Maya's voice was small. "Yes, baby?" "Why did we leave? The lady seemed nice. She knew about the smiley pancakes." Adrian set down the bowl of mac and cheese, searching for words that would make sense to a 6-year-old. How do you explain that sometimes the past reaches out with gentle hands and still manages to shake your entire world? "Sometimes grown-ups need to talk about complicated things," he said finally, "and sometimes those conversations are too grown-up for little ears." Maya considered this, twirling cheese around her fork. Was she talking about Mommy? The question hit Adrian like a physical blow. His daughter was too perceptive, too willing to see patterns he'd hoped would remain invisible. "Why would you think that?" "Because you got the same face you get when you look at Mommy's pictures. The sad, happy face." Adrian sat down heavily across from her. Maya had named it perfectly. The expression that came when joy and grief collided, when memory felt like both a gift and a wound. "You're very smart, you know that?" Maya nodded seriously. "Mommy always said I had smart eyes. She said I could see things other people missed." She was right. They ate in companionable quiet after that, Maya's natural resilience gradually returning as she told Mr. Whiskers elaborate stories about their day. But Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that their world had tilted slightly off its axis, and he wasn't sure how to set it right. Later, after Maya's bath and 3 stories and 2 glasses of water and one last trip to the bathroom, Adrian tucked her into bed surrounded by her collection of stuffed animals. Mr. Whiskers held the place of honor on the pillow beside her. "Daddy?" Maya's voice was drowsy but thoughtful. "I dreamed about the nice lady last night, before we even met her." Adrian went very still. "What kind of dream?" "She was sitting in Mommy's chair at the kitchen table, and she was laughing, and Mommy was there too, but she looked different, younger. And they were both laughing about something, and the whole house felt happy." Adrian's throat closed. Evelyn's chair, a vintage Windsor chair she'd found at an estate sale, still sat at their kitchen table, empty now for 3 years. He hadn't moved it, couldn't bring himself to change that particular piece of their shared geography. "Dreams can be strange things, sweetheart." But it didn't feel strange. It felt like remembering, except I never saw them together before. Maya yawned, her eyelids heavy. "Do you think maybe Mommy sent her to us? Like how she sends the cardinals to the bird feeder when I'm sad?" Adrian kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Maybe. Go to sleep now, okay?" But sleep eluded Adrian. He sat in his home office, really just the spare bedroom with a drafting table and too many coffee rings on the windowsill, staring at blueprints that might as well have been written in a foreign language. The precise lines and careful measurements that usually grounded him felt meaningless tonight. Isabel Grant, Evelyn's stepsister. A sister Evelyn had never mentioned, not once in all their years together. The questions multiplied in the darkness. Why had Evelyn kept Isabel a secret? What had happened between them? And why did Isabel appear now, in their small town, working at their diner, on the exact day Maya would notice the resemblance? Adrian pulled out his phone and typed Isabel Grant Portland into the search engine, then stopped. What was he doing? If he wanted answers, he could simply return to the diner and ask for them. But something held him back. Not just caution, but fear. Fear that Isabel's story would be true, and that everything he thought he knew about Evelyn would prove to be incomplete. The next morning brought gray skies and the familiar rhythm of getting Maya ready for school. She seemed to have bounced back from their truncated diner visit, chattering about show and tell and playground politics while Adrian braided her hair and packed her lunch. But as he drove to work after dropping her off, Adrian couldn't escape the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The careful routine that had sustained them for 3 years suddenly felt fragile, like a house built on blueprints that were missing crucial load-bearing details. Adrian Wells and Associates occupied the 2nd floor of a converted Victorian on Main Street, the kind of building that looked charming from the outside but required constant maintenance inside. Adrian shared the space with his longtime colleague and closest friend, Jonas Rivera, whose desk was a monument to organized chaos. Coffee cups, sketches, reference books, and at least 3 different projects in various states of completion. "You look like hell," Jonas said cheerfully as Adrian walked in, carrying his coffee and wearing yesterday's emotional exhaustion like an ill-fitting coat. "Good morning to you, too." Jonas studied him with the keen eye of someone who'd known Adrian since college, who'd helped him through the worst days after Evelyn's death, who could read his moods like architectural plans. What happened? Adrian sat down at his drafting table and stared at the suburban office complex he'd been designing for the past month. The clean lines and efficient spaces mocked him. When had his own life become so much messier than his professional work? Maya met someone yesterday, someone who claims to know Evelyn. Jonas set down his coffee. Claims? Says she's Evelyn's stepsister. I'd never heard of her. That's unexpected. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one word for it. What did she want? I don't know. I didn't give her a chance to explain. I grabbed Maya and left. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Jonas was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he said, "But you're thinking about going back." It wasn't a question. Adrian looked at his friend. Practical, steady Jonas, who never let emotion override logic, who talked him through a dozen architectural crises and twice as many personal ones. Maya liked her, said she looked like Mommy. And did she? Adrian closed his eyes, remembering Isabel's face, the familiar shape of her eyes, the way she'd knelt down to Maya's level with such natural grace. Yes. Enough that it scared me. Scared you how? Adrian couldn't answer immediately. How do you explain that sometimes healing feels like betrayal? That opening your heart again, even to family, feels like admitting your grief wasn't deep enough, your love not lasting enough? I've spent 3 years building a life for Maya. A safe life, predictable, and then this woman appears and suddenly nothing feels certain anymore. Jonas leaned back in his chair. Adrian, you know I love you like a brother, but you can't protect Maya from every possibility of pain. And if this woman is really Evelyn's family, what if she's lying? What if she's not? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Adrian stared at his drafting table, at the precise lines and careful measurements that promised structure and stability, and wondered when his life had become something that couldn't be contained within the neat boundaries of blueprints. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya's school, early dismissal today due to teacher planning, pickup at 1:30. Adrian looked at the clock, 11:45. In 2 hours, he'd have to face his daughter's questions, her hope, her innocent belief that good things could still happen in their carefully ordered world. I don't know what to do, Jonas. His friend smiled, the kind of smile that held years of friendship and hard-earned wisdom. Yes, you do. You're just scared to do it. Adrian stared at the blueprints spread across his desk, all those precise lines and careful measurements, and realized that maybe it was time to start building something he couldn't plan in advance. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind the safety of architectural drawings and start constructing something messier, more uncertain, but ultimately more real. Maybe it was time to go back to the diner. Adrian sat in his car outside Maple's diner for 20 minutes before he found the courage to turn off the engine. Maya was safely at school for another hour, giving him time to face Isabel Grant without his daughter's perceptive eyes watching every nuance of emotion cross his face. The afternoon crowd was lighter, a few construction workers grabbing late lunch, an elderly couple sharing pie at the corner booth, a businessman typing furiously on his laptop while his coffee grew cold. Adrian spotted Isabel immediately, her auburn hair catching the fluorescent light as she refilled sugar dispensers at the counter. She looked up when the bell chimed his entrance, and he saw surprise flicker across her features, followed quickly by something that might have been relief. "Mr. Wells," she said carefully, setting down the sugar dispenser, "I wasn't sure I'd see you again." Neither was I. Adrian chose a booth near the back, away from the other customers. "Can we talk?" Isabel glanced around the diner, checking on her other tables, then nodded. "Give me just a minute." She moved efficiently through her section, topping off coffee cups and checking if anyone needed anything else. Adrian watched her work, noting the easy way she interacted with customers, the genuine warmth in her smile. She belonged here in a way that seemed natural, unforced. When she finally slid into the booth across from him, Adrian noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands remained carefully folded on the table. "You want to know about Evelyn," she said. "It wasn't a question. I want to know why she never mentioned you." In 8 years together, she never once said she had a sister. Isabel's smile was sad. Stepsister. And we weren't close. Not for a long time. Why not? Isabel was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the Formica tabletop. How much do you know about Evelyn's childhood? Some. Her father died when she was young. Her mother remarried. They moved around a lot. My father was the one her mother married, Thomas Grant. Isabel's voice grew soft with memory. I was 8 when they got married. Evelyn was 6. At first, it was like having the sister I'd always wanted. She was so bright, so full of life. She made our big, empty house feel warm. Adrian felt something twist in his chest. This was the Evelyn he'd known. The woman who could light up a room just by entering it, who saw possibility where others saw problems. What happened? We grew up. Isabel's laugh held no humor. Teenage girls can be cruel, even to each other. Maybe especially to each other. Evelyn was beautiful, popular. Everything came easily to her. I was not. I was jealous, resentful. I said things I shouldn't have said. What kind of things? Isabel looked away, toward the window where afternoon light painted shadows across the empty parking spaces. I told her she wasn't really my sister, that she never would be, that she was just a stranger living in my house pretending to be family. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with old pain. She was 17. I was 19. It was right before she graduated high school. Isabel's voice was barely above a whisper. She was so excited about college, about getting out of our small town. She wanted me to be excited for her too, but all I could see was her leaving me behind. Again. Again? Everyone always left. My mother died, then Dad remarried, and suddenly I had to share him. Then Evelyn's mother died when Evelyn was 15, and Dad was so consumed with grief and taking care of Evelyn that I felt invisible. When Evelyn got her acceptance letter to Portland State, I snapped. Adrian could picture it. 2 young women, both nursing their own wounds, both struggling to understand what family meant when it was built from pieces of other broken families. She tried to apologize, Isabel continued. After she started college, she called, wrote letters. But I was too proud, too hurt. I thought she was just feeling guilty. I thought once she made new friends, found her real life, she'd forget about me anyway. But she didn't. No, she kept trying for almost 2 years. Cards on my birthday, Christmas presents sent to the house. Little notes telling me about her classes, her friends, asking about mine. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. The last letter I got was right before she met you. She was so happy, Adrian. She wrote 3 pages about this architecture student who made her laugh, who listened to her dreams about opening an art gallery someday. Adrian's throat tightened. He remembered those early days, the way Evelyn would stay up all night talking about her plans for the future, the way she made him believe anything was possible. Why didn't you answer? Because I was 21 and stupid and convinced that if I couldn't have the family I wanted, I didn't want any family at all. Isabel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. By the time I realized how wrong I was, too much time had passed. She'd graduated, moved to Millbrook, gotten married. She had a real life, a real family. I figured she was better off without the stepsister who'd broken her heart. The diner's bell chimed, and Adrian looked up to see Maya skip through the door, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She spotted them immediately, her face lighting up with the kind of pure joy that only children could manage. "Daddy, you came back!" She slid into the booth beside Adrian, then beamed at Isabel. "And you're here too! Are we having pancakes? Can I have the smiley ones?" Isabel looked at Adrian questioningly, and he found himself nodding. 1 order of smiley-face pancakes coming up. As Isabel stood to put in the order, Maya tugged on Adrian's sleeve. "Daddy, why does the nice lady look sad? Did someone hurt her feelings?" Adrian looked across the diner at Isabel, who was wiping her eyes as she spoke to the cook, and felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, but opening, like a door that had been locked for too long. "Sometimes grown-ups carry sad feelings from a long time ago," he told Maya, "even when good things are happening now." Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to all matters of the heart. Maybe we should be extra nice to her then. Mommy always said kindness was the best medicine for sad feelings. When Isabel returned with chocolate milk for Maya and fresh coffee for Adrian, Maya had already pulled out her crayons and was working on a drawing. "What are you making, sweetheart?" Isabel asked, settling back into the booth. It's a picture of you and me and Daddy and Mr. Whiskers having pancakes, Maya said matter-of-factly. I'm going to give it to you so you can remember us when we're not here. Isabel's breath caught, and Adrian saw tears threaten again. That's very thoughtful of you, Maya. Daddy says remembering good things helps when you're sad. Do you have lots of good things to remember? Isabel looked at Adrian over Maya's bent head, and something passed between them. An understanding, maybe, or just the beginning of one. I'm starting to, Isabel said softly. I'm starting to have more good things to remember. Maya beamed and went back to her drawing, humming the same lullaby she'd been humming the day before. One of Evelyn's songs, Adrian realized. And as Isabel listened, really listened, her face transformed with recognition, and something that looked like wonder. She has Evelyn's voice, Isabel whispered, so quietly only Adrian could hear. When she hums like that, she sounds exactly like Evelyn did when we were young. Adrian felt the last of his resistance crumble. Whatever had happened between the sisters, whatever wounds had never healed, Maya didn't deserve to pay the price for their failures. Would you like to stay for dinner? He heard himself ask. After your shift ends, I mean. Maya's been asking about those pancakes I promised her. Isabel's smile was like sunrise. I'd love that. I'd really love that. And as Maya chattered about school and showed Isabel her drawing of their unconventional family, Adrian allowed himself to hope that maybe, sometimes, the past didn't have to stay buried. Maybe sometimes it could come back wearing a kinder face, offering second chances to people who thought they'd used up all their chances long ago. The house felt different with Isabel in it. Adrian had tried to prepare himself for the strangeness of it. Another woman in Evelyn's kitchen, sitting in Evelyn's chair, laughing with Maya at their small dining table. But what he hadn't expected was how natural it felt, how easily Isabel fit into the rhythms of their evening routine. Maya had insisted on giving Isabel the full tour, from her bedroom with its collection of stuffed animals to the half-finished treehouse in the backyard that Adrian had been working on since spring. Isabel had admired everything with genuine enthusiasm, asking questions about Maya's drawings and listening to elaborate stories about each stuffed animal's personality and preferred sleeping position. Now Maya was upstairs, taking her bath and probably flooding the bathroom floor despite Adrian's repeated instructions about keeping the water in the tub. Isabel sat at the kitchen table, looking through a photo album Maya had insisted on showing her, pictures of birthdays and Christmas mornings and ordinary moments that made up the texture of their life. She's remarkable, Isabel said, turning a page to reveal Maya's first day of kindergarten. So much like Evelyn, but different too, more confident maybe, more secure in who she is. Adrian poured himself another cup of coffee, though he'd probably had too much caffeine already. Evelyn was confident. As an adult, yes, but as a child, Isabel shook her head. She worried constantly about saying the wrong thing, about not being smart enough or pretty enough or good enough. She carried that need to prove herself everywhere. It was strange hearing about Evelyn from someone who'd known her before Adrian existed in her world. All his memories began when Evelyn was 22, fully formed, the woman who'd captured his heart in the university library while researching sustainable architecture. This version, the uncertain girl, the stepsister, the young woman writing letters that went unanswered, felt both foreign and familiar. Maya asks about her mother sometimes, Adrian said, settling across from Isabel. I tell her what I can, but there are gaps, things I don't know. What kind of things? Her childhood, mostly. Her dreams before she met me. Why she wanted to open an art gallery but never did. Adrian paused. Why she never mentioned having a sister. Isabel was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of a photograph. Maya and Adrian building a snowman last winter, both of them pink-cheeked and grinning. Can I show you something? She asked finally. Adrian nodded, and Isabel reached into her purse, pulling out a small wooden box, the kind used for jewelry or keepsakes. She set it on the table between them and lifted the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Adrian recognized Evelyn's handwriting immediately. The careful cursive she'd used for important things, so different from her usual hurried scrawl. I kept them all, Isabel said softly, even after I stopped reading them, even after I convinced myself I didn't care. She untied the ribbon with careful fingers and selected a letter from the middle of the stack. The envelope was addressed to Isabel Grant in Evelyn's neat handwriting, postmarked 7 years ago. "This one came right after Maya was born," Isabel said, offering him the letter. "I never opened it." Adrian stared at the envelope, feeling the weight of secrets and lost opportunities. "Maybe you should read it first." "I can't. I've tried so many times over the years, but I can't. Too much time has passed. Too much guilt." Isabel's voice was barely above a whisper. "But maybe you could read it to me." Adrian's hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope, unfolded the pages of Evelyn's neat handwriting. The date at the top was 3 days after Maya's birth. Quote, "Dear Isabel," he began, his voice catching slightly. "I know you probably won't read this, just like you haven't read the others. But I had to write anyway, because something wonderful has happened and I can't imagine not sharing it with you." Isabel made a small sound, somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "I had a baby, Isabel, a little girl. We named her Maya Grace, and she's the most perfect thing I've ever seen. She has Adrian's eyes but my stubborn chin, and when she cries, she sounds exactly like you did when you were little and upset about something." Adrian paused, looking at Isabel, whose tears were flowing freely now. "I keep thinking about when we were young, about how we used to play house and argue about who got to be the mommy. Do you remember? You always said you'd have 6 children and name them all after flowers. I said I'd have just one perfect baby and love her enough for 6. Isabel laughed through her tears. "I'd forgotten about that, the flower names. Daisy and Rose and Iris and Lily. I wish you could meet her, Isabel. I wish we could be sisters again, real sisters this time. I know I hurt you. And I know you think I chose my new life over our family, but that was never true. You are my family. You always were, even when I was too young and scared to know how to keep you." Adrian's voice broke slightly on the last sentence. He'd never known about Evelyn's regrets, about the sister she'd grieved for in silence. "I named Maya after the poet Maya Angelou because she wrote about caged birds learning to sing. But if I'm being honest, I also chose it because it sounds like my girl, my heart, my hope. I hope someday you'll meet her. I hope someday she'll know her Aunt Isabel, who taught me how to braid friendship bracelets and who stayed up all night with me when I had the flu and who loved me even when I was too stupid to see it." Isabel was crying openly now, her hands pressed to her mouth. "I love you, Isabel. I never stopped loving you, not even when we weren't speaking, not even when you returned my letters unopened. If you never want to see me again, I understand. But please know that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you have a niece who carries the best parts of both of us, and she will always know that she had an Aunt Isabel who was brave and kind, and who helped shape her mother into the woman who could love her enough for 6 children." Adrian set the letter down, his own eyes burning. The kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of Maya splashing upstairs and Isabel's quiet tears. "She signed it, your sister always, Evelyn," he said softly. Isabel buried her face in her hands. "I was so stupid, so proud and stubborn and stupid. You were young, you were hurt. But she tried. For years she tried, and I was too wrapped up in my own pain to see that she was hurting too." Isabel looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. "She had a baby, Adrian. She had Maya, and she wanted me to know, and I never even read the letter." From upstairs came Maya's voice, singing the same lullaby she'd been humming all week. Isabel went very still. "That song," she whispered. Evelyn used to sing it to her. "No, you don't understand." Isabel stood up, moving toward the stairs as if drawn by the melody. "That's not just any lullaby. That's a song our mother used to sing. Evelyn's mother and mine, before she remarried my father. It was the one thing they shared from before." Adrian followed her to the bottom of the stairs, where they could hear Maya's sweet voice drifting down from the bathroom. "Evelyn taught it to Maya," Isabel breathed. "She remembered our mother's song and she taught it to her daughter." As if sensing their presence, Maya's voice called down from upstairs. "Daddy, I'm ready for stories!" Isabel wiped her eyes and looked at Adrian. "Thank you for letting me read that, for letting me know that she didn't forget me. Would you like to stay for stories?" Adrian asked. "Maya would love it, and I think Evelyn would want you to hear her sing." Isabel nodded, not trusting her voice. As they climbed the stairs together, Adrian realized that the weight he'd been carrying for 3 years wasn't just grief. It was incomplete stories, unanswered questions, love that had nowhere to go. But tonight, in this house filled with Evelyn's presence and Maya's laughter and Isabel's tears, something was being healed. Not replaced, not forgotten, but transformed into something larger and more complex, and ultimately more true. The past was making itself known, not as an enemy to be fought, but as a gift to be unwrapped carefully, with reverence for all the love and loss it contained. The October evening had turned crisp enough for jackets, so Adrian and Isabel sat on the front porch steps while Maya played in the yard with a flashlight, chasing fireflies that blinked like scattered stars in the gathering dusk. Mr. Whiskers sat propped against the porch railing, serving as the official witness to Maya's adventures. "She has so much of Evelyn in her," Isabel said, watching Maya dance across the grass, her laughter carrying on the cool air. "But there's something else too, a lightness that Evelyn took years to find." Adrian pulled his jacket closer, grateful for the distance between them and Maya's sharp ears. "Tell me about Evelyn when you were young, the real stories, not the sanitized versions." Isabel was quiet for a moment, gathering memories like scattered photographs. She was fearless about some things, and terrified of others. She'd climbed to the very top of the old oak tree in our backyard, but she was afraid to sleep without a nightlight until she was 12. I never knew about the nightlight. She had terrible dreams sometimes, about losing people she loved, our mothers. Deaths affected her more than she let on. Isabel picked at a loose thread on her sweater. "She used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, and we'd make up stories about where the thunder came from. She always insisted it was giants playing bowling in the clouds." Maya's delighted squeal interrupted them as she managed to cup a firefly in her hands, watching it glow through her fingers before releasing it back into the darkness. "Look, Daddy, it's like holding a tiny star." "Very nice, sweetheart. 5 more minutes, then we need to come inside." Maya nodded and continued her pursuit, her energy seemingly endless despite the long day. "She wanted children so badly," Adrian said quietly. "Even when we were still students, she'd point out babies in restaurants, talk about names she liked. But after Maya was born, she seemed, I don't know, sad, sometimes. Like she was missing something." Isabel turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "She'd hold Maya and cry. Happy tears, she always said, but there was something else there. A longing for something I couldn't give her." Adrian's voice grew soft with memory. "I used to think it was postpartum depression, but now you think she was grieving for the family she'd lost." "Maybe." She never talked about her childhood much. Said it was complicated, that some things were better left in the past. I respected that, but maybe I should have pushed harder. Isabel was quiet for a long moment, watching Maya's flashlight beam dance across the yard. "She was protecting you, Adrian, and herself. Evelyn always believed she could create a perfect life if she just tried hard enough, controlled enough variables. Admitting that she missed me, that she regretted our estrangement, that would have meant admitting she'd failed at something important. But she didn't fail. You both failed. You both chose pride over love." The words came out harsher than Adrian intended, and Isabel flinched. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "You're right. We were both too young and too hurt to know how to bridge the gap we'd created." She paused. "But maybe it's not too late to honor what we should have done then." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we can give Maya what Evelyn and I never had, a real family. Not perfect, not without its complications, but real." Maya came running up the porch steps, breathless and glowing with excitement. "I caught 6 fireflies." "Well, I caught them and let them go, but I still caught them." "Did you see?" "We saw," Adrian said, scooping her onto his lap. "You're quite the firefly hunter." Maya settled against his chest, her energy finally beginning to wind down. She looked at Isabel with the serious expression she wore when contemplating important matters. "Isabel, do you have a family?" Isabel's breath caught slightly. "Not really, sweetheart. It's mostly just me." "That's sad. Everyone should have a family." Maya was quiet for a moment, then brightened. "You could be part of our family? Daddy and I have lots of room for more people." Adrian felt his chest tighten. Children had a way of cutting straight to the heart of things, ignoring all the adult complications that made simple solutions seem impossible. "That's very sweet, Maya, but—" "But what?" Maya interrupted, looking between them with genuine confusion. "You like each other, right? And you both like Mommy. And I like you both. That's how families work." Isabel looked at Adrian helplessly, and he saw his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that families are more complicated than addition? That loving someone doesn't automatically solve the problems between you? "Sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out," Adrian said carefully. Maya considered this with the patience she usually reserved for waiting for Christmas morning. "How much time?" "I don't know, sweetheart." "Well, while you're figuring it out, can Isabel come to dinner again? And maybe we could show her Mommy's garden? And the photo albums? And maybe she could read me a story sometime?" Adrian looked at Isabel, who was smiling through tears. "Would you like that, Isabel, to see Evelyn's garden?" "I'd love that." As they walked around to the backyard, Maya chattering about the various plants and their histories, Adrian found himself seeing his home through Isabel's eyes. The raised beds Evelyn had designed and planted, now carefully maintained in her memory. The stone path they'd laid together one summer weekend. The roses that bloomed every year in defiance of his questionable gardening skills. "She always loved roses," Isabel said softly, kneeling beside the bushes that were preparing for winter dormancy. "When we were little, she insisted on planting a whole row of them along our back fence. They never thrived, wrong soil, wrong location, but she kept trying year after year." "These are different varieties than what she started with," Adrian said. "I learned the hard way that good intentions aren't enough. You have to understand what each plant needs to flourish." Isabel looked up at him, and he realized they weren't just talking about roses anymore. "Maybe that's what went wrong with Evelyn and me," she said. "We kept trying to force something that needed different conditions to grow." Maya had found a ladybug on one of the rose bushes and was gently encouraging it to climb onto her finger. "Look, it's so tiny and perfect." "Make a wish," Isabel said automatically, and Maya closed her eyes tight. "What did you wish for?" Adrian asked when Maya opened her eyes. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true, but it was a good wish, a family wish." As the ladybug flew away, carrying Maya's secret hope into the darkening sky, Adrian felt something shift inside him. Not the sharp crack of breaking, but the gentler movement of something long closed beginning to open. Maybe families weren't built according to blueprints. Maybe they grew like gardens, slowly, patiently, with lots of trial and error and faith that love would find a way to flourish even in imperfect conditions. Maybe it was time to stop trying to control the design and start trusting the process of growth. Standing there in Evelyn's garden, watching his daughter delight in Isabel's presence, Adrian allowed himself to hope that some stories didn't end with loss. Some stories were just waiting for the right conditions to begin their next chapter. 3 weeks later, their Thursday ritual had evolved into something Adrian never could have planned. Instead of sitting alone with Maya at their usual booth, Isabel now joined them when her shift ended, sliding into the seat across from them with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. "Tell Isabel about the art project," Maya urged, bouncing slightly in her seat as she waited for her smiley-face pancakes. She'd insisted Isabel sit with them today, instead of serving them, bribing Margie with a hand-drawn picture to cover Isabel's section. "Ms. Patterson wants us to draw our families," Maya explained to Isabel, pulling a folded paper from her backpack. "But I asked if I could draw my extended family too, because that's what you are, right? Extended?" Adrian felt his chest tighten as Maya unfolded her drawing. The crayon figures were unmistakably them. Adrian tall and dark-haired, Maya small with yellow pigtails, and Isabel with auburn hair and a warm smile. They stood in front of a house with oversized flowers and a disproportionately large sun beaming down on them. "See? That's you," Maya pointed to Isabel's figure. "And that's your special spot at our table, and that's Mr. Whiskers watching from the window because he doesn't like pancakes, but he likes watching us be happy." Isabel stared at the drawing, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "It's beautiful, Maya. Absolutely beautiful. Ms. Patterson said families come in all shapes and sizes, and that what matters isn't who you're related to by blood but who you choose to love, so I chose you." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, profound in its innocence. Adrian watched Isabel struggle with emotion, her fingers tracing the crayon outline of her own figure in Maya's drawing. "What did you draw for yourself?" Isabel asked, her voice slightly hoarse. Maya pointed to a small figure next to the Isabel drawing. "That's me, but I also drew this." She pointed to a faint purple figure standing slightly apart from the group. "That's Mommy. She's not gone, she's just watching over us, making sure we're all okay." Adrian's throat closed. In 3 years, Maya had never included Evelyn in her family drawings, always saying it made her too sad. But now, with Isabel in the picture, somehow Maya felt safe enough to acknowledge her mother's presence. "Your mama would be so proud of this drawing," Isabel said softly, "and so proud of the kind, loving little girl you've become." Maya beamed, then grew serious. "Do you think she knows about you? About how you make Daddy smile more now?" Adrian felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Maya? You do smile more," Maya continued matter-of-factly, "and you don't get that worried look when you think I'm not watching. And you've been humming. You never used to hum." Isabel looked at Adrian with surprise and something that might have been hope. "You've been humming." "It's nothing," Adrian mumbled, but Maya was already nodding enthusiastically. "He hums the song Mommy used to sing, the one about the mockingbird. And yesterday I heard him singing in the shower, which he never does because he says he sounds like a dying moose." "Maya!" Adrian protested, but Isabel was laughing, the first real, unguarded laugh he'd heard from her. "A dying moose?" she teased. "It's an accurate description," Adrian admitted, finding himself smiling despite his embarrassment. Their pancakes arrived, and Maya immediately began constructing an elaborate syrup lake for her smiley faces to swim in. Isabel watched with the fascination of someone still learning the rhythms of child logic. "Can I ask you something?" Isabel said to Maya, who nodded while taking a massive bite of pancake. "What's your favorite memory of your mommy?" Maya considered this seriously, syrup dripping from her fork. "When I was really little, before I started school, she used to make these special weekend mornings. We'd stay in our pajamas all day and build blanket forts in the living room and have tea parties with Mr. Whiskers and all my stuffed animals. She'd read me stories and we'd make up songs about whatever we could see out the window." Adrian remembered those mornings. Evelyn's laughter echoing through the house, Maya's delighted squeals, the way sunlight would filter through their makeshift fort walls and make everything feel magical. "She called them pajama adventures," Maya continued. "She said the best adventures were the ones where you felt safe and loved the whole time." Isabel's eyes filled with tears. "That sounds exactly like something your mommy would do. When we were little, she used to insist on having backwards days where we'd wear our clothes inside out and eat dessert for breakfast and read bedtime stories in the middle of the afternoon." "Really?" Maya's eyes went wide. "That sounds amazing. Can we have a backwards day sometime?" "I don't see why not," Adrian found himself saying, surprising them all. Later, after Isabel's shift had ended and they'd walked to the park where Maya could burn off her pancake-fueled energy, Adrian found himself sitting on a bench beside Isabel, watching his daughter navigate the playground with fearless determination. "She's healing, you know," Isabel said quietly, "being able to talk about Evelyn, to include her in her drawings. That's healthy, that's what children need." "I know, I've been so focused on protecting her from more loss that I forgot she needed connection too." "You've done an incredible job with her, Adrian. She's confident and happy and secure in your love. That foundation is what's letting her open her heart to me." They watched Maya attempt to cross the monkey bars, her face scrunched in concentration. When she made it halfway across before dropping to the sand below, she looked up at them with a grin instead of tears. "Did you see? I made it farther than last time." "We saw," Isabel called back. "You're getting stronger every day." As Maya ran back to try again, Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. "Jonas thinks I've been too protective. Says I've been trying to build walls instead of bridges." Jonas sounds wise. He is. He's also been insufferably smug about being right about you. Right about me how? Adrian looked at her, this woman who'd appeared in their lives like an answered prayer they hadn't known how to ask for. He said you weren't a threat to Maya's happiness. You were a gift to it. Isabel was quiet for a moment, watching Maya successfully cross 3 monkey bars before dropping down with a triumphant cheer. "I never thought I'd be part of a family again," she said softly, After I lost Evelyn, after I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, I thought I'd missed my chance. Maybe second chances don't work the way we think they do, Adrian said. Maybe they don't come as do-overs. Maybe they come as something completely new that still honors what came before. Maya ran over to them, breathless and glowing with pride. Did you see? I made it all the way to the 4th bar. Next week, I'm going to make it to the 5th. I have no doubt you will, Isabel said, opening her arms as Maya climbed onto the bench between them. As they sat there, 3 people who'd found each other through loss and hope, and a 6-year-old's unwavering belief in the possibility of love, Adrian realized that some of the best things in life couldn't be planned or designed. They could only be welcomed when they arrived, like unexpected gifts wrapped in the courage to try again. The first sign of trouble came on a rainy Tuesday when Adrian picked Maya up from school and found her unusually quiet. She sat in her booster seat, staring out the window with the kind of profound sadness that seemed too large for her small body. "How was school today, sweetheart?" "Fine," Maya said in a voice that clearly indicated it was anything but fine. Adrian tried again. "What did you learn about today?" "Nothing important." By the time they reached home, Adrian's concern had sharpened into worry. Maya trudged upstairs to her room without her usual chatter about homework or playground adventures. He found her 20 minutes later lying on her bed with Mr. Whiskers clutched tight to her chest, staring at the ceiling. "Maya, what's wrong?" She rolled over to face the wall. "Chloe says Isabel isn't really my family. She says family has to be blood, and that Isabel is just pretending because she feels sorry for us." Adrian felt something hot and protective flare in his chest. Chloe doesn't know what she's talking about. But what if she's right? Maya's voice was small and scared. What if Isabel gets tired of pretending and goes away like... She didn't finish the sentence, but Adrian heard the unspoken words. Like Mommy did. He sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "Isabel isn't pretending, Maya, and she's not going anywhere." "How do you know?" The question hit Adrian harder than he'd expected. How did he know? What promises had actually been made? What commitment had Isabel given beyond showing up for pancakes and bedtime stories and impromptu visits to the park? The truth was, he didn't know. They'd been building something together, he and Isabel and Maya, but they'd never defined what it was or discussed what it meant for the future. They'd been living in a bubble of tentative happiness, avoiding the harder questions about permanence and expectations. "I just know," he said finally, but the words felt inadequate even to his own ears. Maya must have heard the uncertainty in his voice because she turned to look at him with eyes too wise for her age. "You're scared too, aren't you, Daddy?" Before Adrian could answer, the doorbell rang. Through Maya's bedroom window, he could see Isabel's car in the driveway. "That's Isabel," Maya said, but instead of her usual excitement, her voice held a note of wariness that broke Adrian's heart. Downstairs, Adrian found Isabel on the front porch, holding a bag of groceries and wearing the smile that had become as familiar as sunrise. "I thought I'd make dinner tonight," she said. "That pasta thing Maya likes with the—" She stopped, registering his expression. "What's wrong?" "We need to talk." Isabel's smile faded. She set the groceries down carefully, as if sudden movements might shatter whatever fragile thing they'd built together. "Is it Maya? Is she okay?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally." Adrian ran a hand through his hair. "She's scared, Isabel. A kid at school said some things about family, about blood relations, and now she's terrified you're going to leave." "I would never." "But you could." The words came out harsher than Adrian intended, fueled by his own fears and Maya's tears and the sudden realization of how vulnerable they'd all become. "That's the problem, isn't it? We've been playing house for weeks, but what are we actually doing here? What is this?" Isabel stepped back as if he'd slapped her. I thought we were building something real." "Based on what? Shared grief? Maya's resemblance to her mother? The fact that you happen to look like Evelyn?" Even as the words left his mouth, Adrian knew they were cruel and unfair. But the fear was talking now. The fear that had kept him safe for 3 years, that had protected Maya from further loss, that had built walls so strong he'd forgotten they were prisons as much as fortresses. "Is that really what you think?" Isabel's voice was quiet, controlled, but Adrian could see the hurt bleeding through. That I'm here because of some sick fascination with replacing my dead stepsister? I don't know what to think. A month ago, we didn't even know you existed. Now Maya's drawing you into family pictures and planning backwards days and asking if you're going to live with us. How did we get here so fast? We got here because a little girl needed love, and I had love to give. Because you were drowning in grief and isolation, and I understood what that felt like. Because sometimes broken people can help heal each other if they're brave enough to try. Isabel's voice cracked on the last words, and Adrian saw tears in her eyes. But instead of softening him, her pain only amplified his own fear. And what happens when you decide this is too hard? When the novelty wears off and you realize you've taken on a widowed father and his grieving daughter. What happens to Maya then? What happens is that you'll have taught her that love is conditional, that family is something you have to earn instead of something you choose. Isabel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens is that you'll have proven that loss is more powerful than hope. From upstairs came the sound of Maya's bedroom door opening, followed by small footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway, still clutching Mr. Whiskers, her face streaked with tears. "Are you fighting about me?" she asked in a voice so small it broke what was left of Adrian's heart. "No, sweetheart," Isabel said quickly, kneeling down to Maya's level. "We're not fighting about you, we're just talking about grown-up things." Grown-up things that make people cry and use angry voices? Adrian felt the weight of his daughter's wisdom, her ability to cut through adult complications and see the truth underneath. They were fighting about her, about fear, about the impossibility of guaranteeing that love wouldn't lead to loss. "Maya," he started, but she was already moving toward Isabel, wrapping her small arms around her neck. "Please don't go away," she whispered. "I promise I'll be good. I promise I won't ask for too much." Isabel held Maya tight, her own tears flowing freely now. "Oh, sweetheart, you could never ask for too much. You're perfect exactly as you are." "Then why does Daddy think you're going to leave?" Over Maya's head, Isabel looked at Adrian with a mixture of pain and something that might have been pity. "Because sometimes, when people have been hurt very badly, they forget how to trust that good things can last," she said gently. "They build walls to keep the hurt out, but sometimes those walls keep the love out too." Maya pulled back to look at Isabel's face. "Is that why you and Mommy stopped talking? Because of walls?" "Yes, baby, because we both built walls instead of bridges." Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to all matters of the heart. Then she looked at Adrian with the kind of direct honesty that only children possessed. "Daddy, are you building walls to keep Isabel out?" Adrian stared at his daughter. This wise, brave little girl who'd already lost so much and was still willing to risk her heart on the possibility of more love. He thought about the barriers he'd constructed over the past 3 years. The careful routines and controlled emotions that had kept them safe but also kept them isolated. He thought about Isabel, who'd shown up in their lives carrying her own grief and regrets, who'd opened her heart to a child she barely knew, who'd chosen vulnerability over self-protection again and again. And he realized that Maya was right. He was building walls. The question was whether he was brave enough to tear them down before they cost him everything that mattered. "Yes," he said quietly. "I think I am, and I don't know how to stop." Isabel stood slowly, her hand still resting on Maya's shoulder. "Maybe you start by deciding what you're more afraid of, losing what you have, or never finding out what you could have had." She picked up her purse from the table where she'd set it, her movements careful and deliberate. "I should go. Give you both some time to think." "Isabel, wait." "It's okay, Adrian, really. But Maya?" She knelt down one more time, taking the little girl's hands in hers. "I want you to know something very important. What Chloe said at school was wrong. Family isn't about blood. It's about love and choice and showing up even when things get hard. And I will always, always choose to be part of your family, no matter what anyone else says or does. Can you remember that?" Maya nodded solemnly. "Will you remember it too, even when Daddy builds walls?" Isabel smiled through her tears. "Especially then." And then she was gone, leaving Adrian alone with his daughter, and the echo of words that felt like both a promise and a challenge. Family is about showing up, even when things get hard. That night, After Maya had finally fallen asleep clutching Mr. Whiskers and whispering prayers for Isabel to come back, Adrian sat in his kitchen staring at his phone. He'd picked it up a dozen times, started to call Isabel, then set it down again. What could he say? That he was sorry for letting fear make him cruel? That he'd spent so long protecting Maya from loss that he'd forgotten to protect her capacity for love? The house felt hollow without Isabel's presence. Over the past month, she'd become part of their rhythm. Her laughter during dinner preparation, her gentle voice reading bedtime stories, her easy presence that made their home feel complete in a way Adrian had forgotten was possible. He'd been a fool. Worse, he'd been a coward. The next morning brought gray skies and Maya's persistent questions about when Isabel was coming back. Adrian deflected as best he could, but his daughter's hope felt like an accusation every time she looked toward the door with expectant eyes. "Can we go see her at the diner?" Maya asked over breakfast. "Let's give her some space for now, sweetheart." "How much space?" "I don't know. But what if she thinks we don't want her anymore? What if she gets lonely?" Each question felt like a small knife, carving away at Adrian's certainty that he'd done the right thing by pushing Isabel away. By the time he dropped Maya at school, he was questioning everything he thought he knew about protecting the people you love. At work, Jonas took one look at Adrian's face and poured him a cup of coffee without comment. "You look like someone who made a spectacular mess of something important," Jonas said finally. "Isabel came over last night. We fought. She left." "About?" "About whether she's really committed to Maya, whether we're moving too fast, whether I can trust her not to disappear when things get complicated." Jonas set down his coffee with more force than necessary. "In other words, you sabotaged the best thing that's happened to you and Maya in 3 years because you're terrified of being happy." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Jonas pulled up a chair, his expression serious. "Adrian, I've watched you for 3 years. I've seen you build your entire life around not getting hurt again. But you know what? You're already hurt. You've been hurt since the day Evelyn died. And no amount of control or careful planning or emotional distance is going to change that. I'm protecting Maya." "From what? From having an aunt who loves her? From seeing her father open his heart again? From learning that families can grow and change and still honor what came before?" Before Adrian could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Maya's school. "Maya seems upset today, not participating in activities. Please call if there are concerns at home." Adrian closed his eyes, the weight of his mistake settling like stones in his chest. That afternoon, when he picked Maya up from school, she climbed into her car seat without her usual chatter about her day. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, caught his eye through the classroom window and mouthed, "Everything okay?" Adrian managed a reassuring nod, but inside, he was breaking. His fear had hurt Maya, the one person he'd been trying most to protect. "Maya, can we talk when we get home?" "Okay," she said quietly, but she didn't look at him. At home, Maya went straight to her room. Adrian found her at her small desk, working intently on something with her crayons. When she saw him, she quickly covered the paper with her arms. "What are you working on?" "A letter," Maya said, her voice careful. "For Isabel. Can I see it?" Maya hesitated, then slowly moved her arms away. The paper was covered with her careful printing, some letters backward, words running together, but the message clear. "Dear Isabel, I am sorry Daddy made you sad. He gets scared sometimes, but he loves you. I love you too. Please don't go away forever. We need you in our family. Love, Maya. P.S. Mr. Whiskers misses you too." Below the words, Maya had drawn a picture of the 3 of them holding hands, with Isabel's figure colored in carefully with auburn crayon. Above them, a purple figure watched from a cloud, Evelyn smiling down at their unlikely family. Adrian's throat closed. "Maya, this is beautiful. Can you help me give it to her? I don't know where she lives." Adrian looked at his daughter's hopeful face, at the letter that somehow managed to say everything he'd been too afraid to voice, and realized that 6-year-olds sometimes understood love better than the adults trying to protect them. "Actually, sweetheart, I think we should deliver it together, and maybe I should write a letter too." Maya's face lit up for the first time in 2 days. "Really? What would your letter say?" Adrian sat down beside her, picking up one of her crayons, a deep blue that reminded him of Isabel's eyes when she laughed. "I think it would say that I'm sorry, that I was scared of loving someone new because I thought it meant I was forgetting Mommy. But that Isabel helped me understand that love doesn't replace love. It just makes more room in your heart. Maya nodded seriously. Like how loving Mr. Whiskers doesn't mean I love my other stuffed animals less. Exactly like that. And maybe you could tell her that we want her to stay? Not just visit, but really stay. Like, maybe she could have her own room here, and we could have pancakes whenever we want, not just on Thursdays. Adrian looked around their home, at the empty spaces that could be filled, at the quiet corners that could ring with laughter, at the walls that could come down to make room for more love. Maybe I could tell her that, he said softly. Would you like that? For Isabel to really be part of our family? Maya threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. I've been wishing for that since the first day I met her, but I was scared to tell you because I thought you'd think I was trying to replace Mommy. Adrian held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the weight of all the conversations they should have had, all the fears they'd both been carrying alone. Maya, loving Isabel doesn't mean replacing Mommy. It means honoring her memory by choosing love even when it's scary. Do you understand? Maya pulled back to look at him, her eyes bright with hope. Does that mean we can be brave together? Yeah, sweetheart, I think it means exactly that. As they sat together at Maya's small desk, writing letters that felt like opening doors instead of building walls, Adrian realized that sometimes the most important blueprints weren't drawn on paper. Sometimes they were written in crayon by a 6-year-old who understood that love was always worth the risk, always worth the hope, always worth the chance that this time it might last forever. Isabel's apartment was a small one-bedroom above the flower shop on Main Street, with narrow stairs that creaked under every footstep. Adrian climbed them slowly, Maya's hand clasped tightly in his, both of them carrying letters that felt heavier than paper should. When Isabel opened the door, her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy. She'd clearly been crying, and the sight of it made Adrian's chest ache with regret. Adrian? Maya? She looked between them in confusion. What are you doing here? Maya stepped forward, holding out her carefully folded letter with both hands like an offering. I wrote you something. Daddy helped me find your address. Isabel knelt down to Maya's level, accepting the letter with trembling fingers. As she read, her face transformed, surprise giving way to wonder, then to tears that seemed to come from someplace deeper than sadness. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered, pulling Maya into a fierce hug. I missed you too, so much. Does that mean you'll come home with us? Maya asked, her voice muffled against Isabel's shoulder. Isabel looked up at Adrian over Maya's head, her eyes questioning, hopeful, afraid. That depends, Adrian said, his voice rough with emotion, on whether you can forgive me for being an idiot. Isabel stood slowly, still holding Maya's hand. Adrian, let me finish, please. He pulled out his own letter, 3 pages written and rewritten until the words felt true. I've been so afraid of losing people that I forgot how to let them in. But Maya reminded me that love isn't about guarantees. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it's scary. He took a deep breath, looking at this woman who'd appeared in their lives like grace disguised as coincidence. Isabel, I don't know what the future holds. I can't promise we won't have hard days, or that grief won't sometimes make me stupid, or that loving us won't sometimes feel like more work than it's worth. But I can promise that if you're willing to try, we're willing to build something real together. Not perfect, but real. Isabel's tears fell freely now. Are you asking me to move in? I'm asking you to come home, Maya piped up before Adrian could answer. Because that's what our house is when you're there. It's home. Isabel laughed through her tears, looking between them with wonder. I never thought, after everything with Evelyn, after all the years I wasted, I never thought I'd get a chance to be part of a family again. Families aren't just born, Adrian said, echoing words Evelyn had once said about the life they were building together. Sometimes they're chosen. Sometimes they're built from pieces of other broken things and somehow become stronger than what came before. Maya tugged on Isabel's hand. So will you? Will you come home and help Daddy make pancakes? He's terrible at the smiley faces. Isabel knelt down again, cupping Maya's face in her hands. Yes, sweetheart. If your daddy really means it, then yes, I'd love to come home. That evening, as they sat around Adrian's kitchen table sharing takeout Chinese food and planning which room would become Isabel's, Maya looked up from her fortune cookie with satisfaction. What does it say? Isabel asked. Maya held up the small slip of paper. It says, "The best things in life come to those who wait, but better things come to those who are brave enough to ask for them." Adrian looked around his kitchen, at Maya chattering about decorating ideas, at Isabel's coat hanging on the chair where Evelyn's used to hang, at Mr. Whiskers presiding over their impromptu feast from his place of honor on the windowsill. It wasn't the life he'd planned, it wasn't the family he'd expected. But as Isabel reached across the table to squeeze his hand while Maya planned their first official backwards day, Adrian realized that sometimes the most beautiful blueprints were the ones you drew as you built, adding rooms for love you never saw coming, creating space for hope you never dared to dream. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, dusting their windows with possibility. Inside, three people who'd found each other through loss and luck, and a little girl's unwavering faith in the power of pancakes, began the work of building a family that honored the past, while embracing an uncertain, hopeful future. Some stories, Adrian thought as Maya's laughter filled the kitchen, don't end. They just learn how to begin again. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.